is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business, coming to you live from Nairobi. I am Peninah Karibe. Let's have a look at what's ahead in the show tonight. 1,800 workers who were trapped in a South African mine have been rescued. Spanish unions march for pension hikes and a rollback of labour market reforms. And Nigerian experts urge the government to help boost ceramics trade and earnings in the country. We begin in South Africa, where Sibanye-Stillwater has announced that around 1,800 workers that were trapped at its Tembelani shaft have been successfully rescued. The workers were trapped on Tuesday afternoon after an accident halted the operation of a shaft used to transport workers. None of the miners have been reported as injured. However, the incident has revived concerns about safety at Sibanye, which last year suffered a spike in fatal accidents. About 1,000 workers were also trapped underground for more than a day at one of the producer's operations in February last year after a storm damaged power supplies in the area. To Mozambique, and people there have been struggling with the devastating aftermath of two major cyclones, Idai and Kenneth, in a space of just 2 months. A brief respite from heavy rains has given aid workers a chance to take stock of the damage. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy has the details.
Tropical cyclone Kenneth made landfall in northern Mozambique 5 days ago on 25th April, near the border with Tanzania. This came as the country was still struggling with the aftermath of Cyclone Idai, which hit further south. Cyclone Kenneth struck in an area where no tropical cyclone has been observed since the beginning of the satellite era, and there is no record of two storms of such intensity striking Mozambique in the same season. Relief agencies are currently working round the clock to prepare flights to deliver aid to the affected population.
The aid workers will also do further damage and needs assessments while they can, as more rain is expected in the coming days, turning the response into a start-stop operation.
Several areas of Pemba, the capital of the northern province of Cabo Delgado, are completely flooded. In the most deprived areas, houses have collapsed, with flash floods leaving mud and debris all over the streets.
Community leaders said they urgently needed food and utensils such as plates, pans, forks, spoons and knives, and women were also asking for hygiene kits. Moving around the streets in Pemba, it's clear a number of houses are damaged and will need repairing, and communities are organising themselves to clean up streets and remove the sand and debris brought by the storms. Despair is evident.
As bad weather conditions persist, access to remote areas remains difficult. The World Food Programme has so far reached 11,500 beneficiaries with food assistance since Cyclone Kenneth first hit the northern province of Cabo Delgado and continues emergency efforts to reach more people.
We are concerned about communicable diseases that may occur, especially about malaria and cholera. These zones are endemic. So obviously, depending on the destruction and rain, there could be increased risk of waterborne diseases.
Forecasts predict that up to 50 millimeters of rainfall per day is expected over much of the Cabo Delgado, with more than 100 millimeters expected in some localized areas. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN.
In less than 2 years, the cost of bread in Zimbabwe has gone up from 90 US cents to the current $3.50. The continuing shortage of foreign currency and inflationary pressures have also exacerbated an already desperate situation. The fallout from bread price hikes continues, with government accusing bakers of colluding. It has vowed to restructure the bread-making industry soon. CGTN's Farai Mokutuya has more.
Since the price of bread nearly doubled last month, there's been an outcry from consumers. Bakers insist a 60% increase in the price of wheat, withdrawal of fuel rebates, rise in labor costs, and continued failure to access foreign currency left them with no choice. Government isn't buying that.
It is fundamentally wrong that you have two big players, same day, increasing prices by the same magnitude to the same price. In my view, there is something that has to be addressed in that part.
Government plans on restructuring the sector.
As government, we have taken a decision that our grain marketing board should be the main, not necessarily sole, but main importer of grain, including wheat, because we know as well that there are a lot of arbitrage positions that are being taken. There is a lot of dishonesty in the whole importation program.
Smaller regional bakeries will begin receiving support to increase competition and hopefully push prices down.
Government also hopes that market resistance to this $3.50 loaf will lead to a self-correction. However, everyone here, including the hard-hit consumer, acknowledge that there are underlying challenges that need to be resolved.
We can't blame the bakers alone. They need to import wheat, and for that, they need foreign currency, which they are buying at exorbitant prices. The solution is that we need foreign currency or have more farmers growing wheat so we don't have to import.
Current local wheat production covers just 4 months' supply. 77,000 hectares of land has been set aside for winter wheat this season to try to mitigate the shortage. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Reducing the public sector wage bill is the main objective of the Tunisian government for 2020. There are more than 650,000 jobless people, including at least 250,000 university graduates. The Tunisian state aims to encourage entrepreneurship and vocational training to reduce the high unemployment rate. Adnel Shawashi has the story.
The Tunisian government has announced that there will be no new recruitment in the civil service in 2020, with the exception of graduates of training schools or certain urgent specialties.
These are the main orientations of the draft state budget for the year 2020. Reducing the public sector wage bill is a necessary structural economic reform.
The draft state budget projects a major increase in the payroll and the adoption of a new budget structure based on programs and objectives.
Job creation is the responsibility of the state and the private sector. Graduates can continue training and learn new skills. Unemployed youths must adapt to the job market. The state is providing all means for training, but no budget for new positions in the public sector.
The announcement has divided the public opinion. Many youths assert that they can rely on themselves to find jobs and earn a decent living, while others maintain that the government has abandoned over 250,000 unemployed university graduates.
Unemployed graduates must look for opportunities in many domains and different sectors. The state cannot bear the weight of the public sector wage bill.
It is true that the state cannot hire all unemployed people. However, it cannot turn a blind eye on their difficult economic and social situation.
There are about 800,000 civil servants in the country. The public sector wage bill grew from 10.7% of GDP in 2010 to more than 15% in 2018. The International Monetary Fund has recommended that Tunisia cut its public sector wage bill. It currently accounts for half of all state expenditure. The government says it is working on structural reforms to trim down the size of the civil service. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Let's have a look at corporate news now. And Nigeria's exportation of crude oil has recently been experiencing severe disruption. It's been attributed to a force majeure declared by two of the biggest oil exploration companies in the country, Shell and Total. They declared force majeure on the country's bonylite and aminum grades of crude oil. This follows the closure of one of two export pipelines, the Number Creek trunk line. Two Canadians who lost 10 family members in the March crash of a 737 MAX in Ethiopia are suing Boeing. The lawsuit adds to the aircraft manufacturer's legal woes stemming from two deadly crashes by the jet. The series of complaints filed in a federal court in Chicago allege that Boeing was negligent in its design and certification of the 737 MAX. Sainsbury's boss Mike Coop has vowed to cut prices and invest in its stores and online business. Coop wants to steer Britain's second biggest supermarket back to sales growth after the humiliation of his failed takeover of rival Asda. Sainsbury's $9.5 billion bid to buy the Walmart-owned Asda was blocked by Britain's competition regulator last week in a public rebuke to Coop, who had orchestrated the deal. And in the 3 months to the end of March, Apple's iPhone sales fell at their steepest ever rate. The firm said revenue from the iPhone dropped by 17% compared with the same period a year earlier. However, Apple CEO Tim Cook says sales were stronger towards the end of March, including in China, where it cut prices to boost demand. Apple lifted its outlook for the 3 months to June, sending shares more than 5% higher in after-hours trading. And that's a wrap of our company news. Time for a short break now, but when we return, our team in South Africa will be looking at black empowerment in the country.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
On May 8th, 27 million South Africans go to the polls. Africa's most industrialized nation is just emerging from recession and still faces enormous economic challenges. Join us on Global Business Africa for a week of in-depth coverage and analysis on the state of the country's economy. A different perspective of events shaping South Africa.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sumitra Naidu. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Welcome to our special coverage on South Africa's upcoming elections. We are examining the political landscape and, of course, the issues that are important for voters. Now, the fourth industrial revolution has become a campaign catchphrase, of course, ahead of the country's May presidential elections. Young voters here are acutely aware of their prospects in a changing world, and certainly politicians have co-opted that phrase to assure them that they have a plan going forward. But the reality is South Africa's unemployment remains stubbornly high. It hovers at around 27%, and that's for the past decade. How then will this translate into jobs for the youth? Well, it's been a year since Ramaphosa's most touted youth employment service was established. YES, which it is called, is an initiative which is aimed at demonstrating the power of collective action in tackling youth unemployment. Well, Stat SA says that 38.9% of the total population between 15 to 24, they are currently not in employment, education or training. Well, CGTN's Yolisa Njamela tells us just how the YES program has been faring so far in the past year. Take a look.
The Youth Employment Service, or YES, as it's popularly referred to, was initially conceptualized in 2018 as part of the CEO initiative. CEOs of South Africa's largest firms had committed to work with government to promote economic growth.
When President Ramaphosa introduced the YES project, he described it as timely and an ambitious intervention to youth unemployment. Many young people who've been brought in and got jobs via the project are describing it as a project that has opened doors for them.
According to Stats SA figures, it would seem thus far the YES project has only made a small dent in decreasing unemployment among the youth. Before YES was introduced, the figures were at 38.8, and a quarter later, post-YES, the figures of youth unemployment were at 38.7. Ramaphosa says the initiative is also aimed at addressing other pressing socio-economic challenges in this country. He implored the business sector to embrace the project.
In the end, it is from these young people that companies that are progressive, that are forward-looking, will be able to draw some of the skilled people who will work to improve the fortunes of the company.
At least one political economist believes that while this is a noble initiative, these kind of opportunities are often short-term and don't necessarily solve the bigger problem of vast unemployment.
From training point of view, probably as a hub of training, one will say it assists in covering young people for 6 months, 12 months for that process. The challenge that it brings is there's no continuation for that. Most of the learnerships after end of the learnership, young people get to be unemployed again, of which it doesn't assist the real problem.
Mkabela says even though these employment opportunities may be short-term, they are necessary and still need to be aligned with today's world.
They will need to be aligned, and then there will need to be proper monitoring and evaluation with regard to where are these young people deployed and what type of skills are they getting. But at the same time, it mustn't be them doing filing. It must be them, not doing unnecessary administrative jobs. The future, which is these young people that are 23 years, 24 years, and 25 years, they really need to be trained to be. It can be social media like managers, marketing managers, data analysts, business analysts, process engineers. You understand, and game creation technicians, and those are the jobs of the future.
The presidency agrees and has promised that there will be further initiatives to address challenges facing the youth. Yolisa Njomela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, we are joined by Sumitra Naidu to delve further into some of these issues. And Sumitra, we're glad to have you with us on the set again. Now, as Yolisa just spoke about, she talked about the YES program. There have been a number of initiatives, programs like this, which is supposed to help create job opportunities for the youth. One of them that comes to mind now is the Black Economic Empowerment Program, which is supposed to force the corporates to incorporate more and more of the youth and more of the disenfranchised in South Africa. But I guess the big question is, are these programs really helping to provide jobs? What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, Black Economic Transformation has been around for a while now, and it hasn't really produced, I'm not saying it hasn't worked, but it hasn't really produced the results that they were actually looking for. And when you call in the private sector, you know, they had a huge issue with fronting, people just putting black people there to say, you know, to tick all the boxes. And it didn't have the true effect. So there was an issue. The program like YES, the Youth Employment Service, these are new initiatives to bring the private sector, to bring big business back on board and to get them in. Obviously, you need to understand the education crisis that we have in this country. We came from, you know, decades of poor education for the majority of South Africans. And then you push them into an economy, you still, you know, the affordability is a huge issue. They can't have good education. And then you expect them to have years of experience before you hire them. So this is an issue. So yes, it's fairly new and it looks like it could work, but it's going to take time and you need to address some of those structural issues.
Now, of course, I know there's been a lot of discussion, especially in this election, on that Black Economic Empowerment Program.
Absolutely. And, you know, economic transformation, you know, Trade and Industry Minister Rob Davies spoke about this, saying that you can't actually have economic transformation if, again, you don't give black people ownership. So this is a huge issue. And I know Angelo Coppola did a story on this, spoke about this, and looked at some of the challenges and why it's actually not materializing.
All right, let's take a look at his package.
There's a school of thought that says that the previous versions of black economic empowerment haven't worked as well as they should have.
We have this endless now increasing gap between the small elite at the top who've done very well out of it and the great mass of people at the bottom who simply don't get a look in on BEE. They don't get the contracts, they don't get the deals, they don't get the management jobs.
The Black Business Council disputes the narrative that black economic empowerment has only benefited a few politically connected people.
The truth is that it has worked. If you look at the economic ownership and management by black people in 1994 and compare it to today, 25 years later, it's chalk and cheese. But the question is, has it been fast enough? Has it been deep enough? And my answer from the Black Business Council is not gone deep enough. It's not gone as fast as it should have been.
There needs to be a different approach to making economic empowerment more inclusive, but it's not a legislative issue.
Yes, at the same time, you need to tweak the scorecards, you need to amend, you need to give resources to the BE Commissioner's office, you need to punish those who are engaging in fronting. Yes, all those things must be done because they talk to the letter, but the spirit is what is lacking now. We need to revive that.
Others are calling for a complete overhaul of current legislation and approach.
We should stop going down the wrong alley, turn instead to what we call economic empowerment for the disadvantaged, where business would be given EED points as a reward for all the contributions that they make to growth, to jobs, to investment, to tax revenues, to R&D investment. And at the same time, we would have a system of tax-funded vouchers for education, healthcare, and housing, which would remove the present bottlenecks in delivery, which would empower poor households immediately.
The Black Business Council says that some companies are merely ticking the black economic empowerment boxes.
You need to police them. So yes, regulations need to be toughened, but at the same time talk to people more, because no amount of regulations, no amount of policing business will work unless business buys in. At the moment I get a sense that business is engaged in begrudging compliance with the law when it comes to transformation.
The general consensus is that the Black Economic Empowerment Project that has been running for 25 years isn't working and needs to be changed. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, of course, the huge question is how will the performance of these programs impact how voters head to the polls this time around? Is the government also, or is the ANC looking to improve some of these programs so that the youth are actually benefiting from them?
Look, Uche, I think there's been a lot of focus, especially in this election. We're seeing quite a few political parties really concentrating on the youth.
Right.
If you look at the numbers, right, voter apathy is not looking good. But if you look at the numbers, we have 9 million eligible young voters in this country, right? 9 million. 50% of them don't actually have jobs. Youth unemployment is a huge issue, and that's really what it's come down to. They will vote with their feet. It's either they go to the polls or they don't go to the polls. But we are seeing political parties concentrating on that. Whether they're going to actually be effective remains to be seen. A lot of the policies need to change. When we were saying earlier, when we came into this democracy, we pitted ourselves at a very high-skilled economy.
Right.
You need to come down to education, address the education problem. You need to address the affordability issue. Lots of students can't actually get to university, to any tertiary education, because it's so expensive. Even programs like YES, how do they get transport to come to the office to do these programs? So all of these issues are very important, and I think people are wondering, they're feeling hopeful that Cyril Ramaphosa now, as a leader of the ANC, he is concentrating on the youth. He's insisted on early childhood development. So you start from a younger generation, you start early. And he's also pushing youth programs, investment summit, to pull in for the young people. And also he had a job summit as well. So there is a big concentration and there is some hope there. And we are seeing it with the rest of
the government is. Now it's interesting because we decided to try and get a sort of pulse of what the youth are thinking. And so we caught up with a young man today. He's actually a graduate. He's actually a student at the University of South Africa, but he had to drop out due to not having enough fees. And I sat down with him to find out exactly what his thoughts are on these programs and whether they have been beneficial to him and his peers. Here's what he had to say. Now, right behind us is the Union Building, where South Africa's Parliament meets once in a while. Do you feel like the decisions that have been made there have been in your interest as a South African youth?
As a South African youth, yes, the freedom of living in a democratic state, yes, they've been met, but the freedom of education, the freedom of job creation, it has been a battle in every South African youth that is living in these days today. Because if you can see, instead of us growing in democracy, we're also growing in the unemployment rate, and then the education is still expensive. Most of the students who pass their matric in South Africa, they still can't afford proper education in the state.
Now you're a student, you're also a member of the workforce. Give me a sense of what your experience has been in terms of how easy or challenging it has been to go about your daily life.
It hasn't been an easy challenge because I had to manage between studying and working, and then studying means I had to pay for my fees, and then not being financially stable, I had to stop studying and then go back to work and then start working to save up for my education. So it hasn't been an easy challenge for my side.
Right. Now we do know the government has set up programs for youth like you. We have the Black Economic Empowerment Program, which is geared towards entrepreneurs. We have YES, which is geared towards the youth. Have you seen these programs being beneficial, not just to you, but your peers as well?
Okay. They are beneficial for the urban area people, youth, because basically on our average townships, it's so hard for the youth to access it because the data is expensive, firstly. As much as there's a lot of smartphone and most of them are on the internet, the application is, the moment the government opens up for it, there's a lot of youth who are down on the township that don't work. Right. So basically they will be applying their criteria. Some of them, they passed their matric good, some of them didn't pass their matric good. And again, it is a program for all South African, but it doesn't reach the broad the broad South African in every province. So it will improve the lives of the certain youth in the certain province where it is actively monitored. But other than that, there's been several youth empowerment in South Africa, but there are no results that to show that they're in their years, but in most cases it's.
So it sounds like to me like you're saying that there are these programs, but around you, you're not seeing them being beneficial.
Around me, because I'm based in Johannesburg, yes, I can see. But back at home, where you will find an average 23-year-old youth of South Africa who went to the varsities, someone with a degree, like they are not useful to them. Like as much as they will apply with their degree, diplomas, but they won't get anywhere. It will be just an application. And then you'll find out later, maybe 6 to 8 months down the line, that's when they will get the response. Like they wouldn't even recall. Some of them, they already went back to the work environment, got something to do, or they've changed their courses. Those who are fortunate enough, they went back to school, changed whatever they studied for something that is tangible, that they could easily get a job within the field.
Right. Now, two major things that we've seen recently is the students protesting fees must fall. We've also seen the rate of unemployment in South Africa rising quite high. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think that it's heading towards a better direction, or it's getting worse?
On my point of view regarding youth unemployment and the student protest, it's something that it's two-sided ways. Firstly, in South Africa you can study, you can get your degrees, but it will be hard for you to get a job based on the experience. You didn't have an experience, right? And then you become unemployment, so you are part of the stats, okay? And because you've studied, at some point you'll find either you studied through financial aid from the government or you studied through a bursary, right? But if you study from the financial aid, you still have to pay back the aid to the government, right? So now it's, the fees must fall. It was a point of like, give us free education. Yes, we do get a free education, but again, the government doesn't, there are no opportunities, because each and every opportunity that you came across is like 1 5 years experience, and by that time you only had done the theoretical part of it. Hence I wouldn't recommend that. Our educational system doesn't, at some point yes, but most of the time it doesn't accommodate us on a practical level. Hence you'll find most graduates are unemployed because they don't have an experience. They only have a theoretical part of it.
Now, looking at all these challenges, how has that influenced the way you plan to vote in the upcoming election?
I'm going to vote for a radical change, something that I see as a change towards my dream, right? Yes, all the parties have presented their manifestos, but some manifestos don't cater for me, hence I wouldn't give in the party the vote, right? My vote is secret, but there are some parties that advocate for what I believe into, the likes of having free education, right? That's a basic human right that we should be getting in South Africa, having free education, having a proper place to stay as a student, or having to balance, having investors investing as student, you see, yes.
Now, what do you expect from the next government? What do you hope to see change from this next government that will come in?
First and foremost, corruption in this country. They need to get rid of corrupt officials in this country. I believe South Africa could have been far from those 25 years of democracy that we've had. Like, we could have improved, and then a clean, corrupt-free government. That's what I'm hoping for. And if the government could invest in our youth, like, and enhance our education system. And so one of the issues that touch me a lot is the issue of safety and security regarding gender-based violence that we experience in South African daily lives. So it's basically something that I would give my vote to a party that promises to protect and give that.
Now, of course, as you heard there, Ishmael still has some hope that things will improve going forward. And Sumitra, what do you think? Is the situation hopeless for the youth going forward?
Look, I think it's starting to change. I think it's going to turn. And just look at the positives in terms of Ramaphosa's time in office so far. He's been a caretaker president, but since he came in, he's done everything that he promised. In his State of the Nation address last year, he promised to have an investment summit, which he did. He promised more jobs for the youth. He launched the Yes campaign. He said there would be a job summit. They did have the job summit. He's also got the ball rolling in terms of the NPA and all of the commissions that we have investigating corruption, state capture. And you've seen in recent weeks and recent months the evidence coming through there that will be strong enough for the NPA to start prosecuting. So I think there is some positive news coming through, and I think, you know, the wheels will turn. I think we'll see some change.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Sumitra. A great note to end there. Thanks for joining us on the set today. And that's it from us in Johannesburg. Tomorrow we'll be heading to Cape Town to take a look at the progress and prospects in the country's tourism sector. Do stay tuned.
Uche and the team in Johannesburg, many thanks. Now you're watching Global Business. Coming up. Spanish unions march for pension hikes and a rollback of labour market reforms. And 2019 Anime China promotes Chinese-made animation to the world.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
For looking at economic data out of the country, the country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Peninah Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
Reporting from Nairobi City Center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. The Federal Reserve has left the key rate unchanged amid mixed economic signals. It left its benchmark rate in a range of 2.25% to 2.5%. Assurances from the Fed last year that any interest rate increases in 2019 were unlikely to help the stock market recover from a steep rout. Investors were concerned that the Fed could destabilize the economy if it continued raising borrowing costs. Spain's unions used traditional Labor Day marches on Wednesday to call on the Socialist Party for pension hikes and a rollback of crisis-era labour market reforms. Spain's unemployment rate neared 27% in 2013. While it has almost halved since, on the back of an economic rebound, it remains the second highest in Europe after Greece. The Conservative People's Party passed a labour market reform at the height of the five-year economic slump from 2008 to 2013. It was aimed at making the system more flexible during downturns. Unions say the reform increased the number of insecure and temporary jobs in a system already plagued by badly paid seasonal work in the tourist and agriculture sectors.
I now have a breath of hope because a left-wing government has won. And seeing what a socialist government has done over the past few months by approving social measures every Friday, such as a €900 minimum wage, a 60% rise for widow pensions, amongst a series of measures, gives me a sense of trust I did not have before. So we hope that with our pressure, this government will look after the interests of the workers and abolish the latest labour reform law.
We want the government to put women in their rightful place with full equality. Our demands are good for everyone, good for men and good for women, because we put work-life balance in the centre. There's lots and lots to do. The new government has a lot, and I repeat, a lot of work to do.
China kicks off a 4-day holiday for this year's International Workers' Day, which falls on May 1st. Travel booking service provider Ctrip estimates more than 160 million Chinese are choosing to travel during the break. That's an over 9% increase compared with the same period last year. Many countries, including Britain, brought in Chinese mobile payment options, hoping to cash in on China's growing tourist outflow.
Beauchamp Place in Knightsbridge has a storied history. A long association with the royal family. Princess Diana was often seen dining on this street, but shop owners here are now trying to connect that British past with a global present by accepting QR code-based payments like WeChat Pay and Alipay.
We've been lucky enough over the years to deal with some of the best artists of their generation.
Family business Gladwell and Patterson deal in international fine art. They've seen their customer base in China grow and hope accepting alternative payment methods will increase their appeal.
What I've enjoyed is the ease of use of it, so that people who have been coming have been able to, and it's been able to put it through easily, and we've been very welcomed by them. And I think that will, as word spreads, that will be enhancing the trade, no problem.
That's the sort of thing that Chinese consumers are really finding very interesting.
Down the road, another family business. Antique jewellery specialists McKenna & Co. say offering WeChat Pay and Alipay has helped get Chinese consumers through the door.
What we're finding is that with the new WeChat system, which is quite new as a system for us, it does generate interest, because if a customer is in Harrods, for example, they're checking their app about WeChat Pay and they'll know that there are people who take it on Beauchamp Place, and if there's a cluster of people who take it, they'll then come to that area and just check it out, especially as it's around the corner from Harrods.
According to the UK-China Visitor Alliance, the number of Chinese visitors to the UK has risen by 150% in the last 5 years. These businesses hope offering new payment methods will make it easier and more appealing for those visitors to spend in their stores.
With WeChat and Alipay, you actually get the pins in the properties.
SafeCharge are an omnichannel payments company. One of their offerings is an app allowing businesses to accept WeChat Pay and Alipay.
A Chinese consumer will spend approximately double that of a US or European consumer. So it's incredibly important that retailers are adopting the payment methods that Chinese consumers like to use, are comfortable with, and also benefit from. There are many financial benefits to a Chinese consumer paying with Alipay or WeChat Pay than it is with an international card.
So is China influencing the more traditional payment systems of the UK?
QR code-based payment has changed payments. So we always see innovation in China before we see it anywhere else, and payments is no different to that. We're starting to see a lot of the major schemes and other payment methods looking at QR codes seriously now, whereas a few years ago maybe they weren't. So Chinese consumers and China in general is changing the face of payments.
Though WeChat Pay and Alipay are rapidly being accepted in London, it's predominantly Chinese consumers who are using them. So companies like SafeCharge are on the watch for local companies adopting similar QR code-based technologies.
The Netherlands is a major agricultural exporter in Europe, despite its small landmass of 42,000 square kilometers. And that's because the country pays high attention to technological development.
Star is a tomato growing company situated in western Netherlands' Lansingerland. The company's greenhouses can produce about 700 tons of high-quality tomatoes every week, with a yearly revenue exceeding 100 million euros. Riel van Ermbreek, operation manager of Red Star, attributes the achievements to a use of high technology.
And we use a lot of techniques and equipment to grow the tomatoes in combination with the artificial light and the outside weather conditions that we have in Holland.
Weather in the Netherlands is actually not suitable for tomato growing due to the country's long winters and insufficient sunlight. But high-tech greenhouses have helped to settle the matter. With a precision temperature and humidity adjustment and also smart supplementary lighting, tomatoes can be cultivated all year round.
The government helps us with all the infrastructure that we have in Holland, and we have several development centers that are trying new techniques for the future. With help from the government, we can develop new techniques that are more better for growing tomatoes and more dedicated for the future.
Thanks to the government's support, many companies in the Netherlands are heavily investing in greenhouse development that's helped to boost crop yields in the country.
Compared to growing a head of lettuce in the field, there we use 70 liters of water to grow a final product. On our hydroponic system, we only need 7 liters of water to grow a final product.
Many companies are now focusing on the development and research of high-tech greenhouses, and most Dutch greenhouses are fully automated.
The greenhouse has got ventilation windows. It has a screening system for the sun protection and climate control. And also an irrigation system to feed the plants, an automatic heating system with a boiler to heat the greenhouse, and in some climates is needed to also cool the greenhouse, and everything is operated by a climate computer that can be controlled inside the office or also by your phone to do everything from a distance.
Greenhouses take up a little over 1,000 hectares of land in the country. That's a quarter of the whole world's glass greenhouse area. Highly developed greenhouse technology has made the Netherlands one of the most important agriculture bases globally. Its agriculture export exceeded 90 billion euros last year. The country is currently the second largest agriculture exporter in the world. Song Yaotian, CGTN.
The 15th China International Cartoon and Animation Festival has brought all of the anime industry under one roof in Hangzhou, the capital city of East China's Zhejiang province. World anime icons such as Disney and Sony have also taken part in the event. Is it a good indicator that the Chinese anime industry is going global? Check it out.
This year's event is more eventful than usual. Many Chinese companies have very active booths showing off their upcoming anime content, attracting cartoon fans of all ages.
They are crazy about cartoon movies and never miss one. Tell me which movie is your favorite?
Animation enthusiasts will have a lot to choose from this year, since many new movies are coming out soon. The new Chinese animation Emperor Yu Tames the Flood held its opening release conference at the event. Complete with various Chinese elements, including paper cutting and bronze casting, the English version of this legendary ancient Chinese story is expected to attract more overseas anime lovers.
Many people like to modify legendary classics. In fact, it is so wrong. We should only make appropriate changes, staying true to the original. What's unique for a nation is also precious for the world.
Joe D'Ambrosia, the general manager of Disney Junior, was very impressed by the lively scene of the event.
We're very excited about how the business here in animation is thriving. I was in China about 18 years ago when the business had just started, and it's such a difference visiting today to see so many different production companies and animated productions being done here in China. So we're very excited about the new content coming out of China, and also the rich storytelling that is coming out of the local animators. But we're really excited to exchange, again, shows and films with each other. I think it'll be the beginning of a really wonderful process, creatively.
Other insiders say more and more Chinese anime companies are trying to tell Chinese stories from a Western perspective and present them to the global audience through anime. The goal is to make cross-cultural exchanges more efficient and more popular for fans all over the world. The week-long event will run until the 5th of May. CGTN.
This is Global Business. Still ahead. Nigerian experts urge the government to help boost ceramics trade and earnings in the country. And an outdoor cinema attracts numerous movie lovers to a unique location in Egypt.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN. See the difference.
For centuries, women in Nigeria have led the way in the local production of ceramics. But now the ancient craft is almost becoming extinct as it struggles to adapt to the modern world. Experts are calling on the government to help boost trade and earnings in the ceramics industry, as well as preserve the traditional culture. CGTN's Philly Haza tells us more.
Like many women from the Ushafa village in the suburbs of Abuja, Titus Dorcas has been making pottery her whole life. Following the local custom, Dorcas learned to trade as a child, but she says unlike in the past, business is not doing well.
This pot-making business used to be very lucrative because many people would buy them to store water and for other domestic reasons. But with advancements in technology, people prefer to use refrigerators. But if we get more support, we can produce other items to bring in a profit and keep us in business.
After a long and strenuous production process, their best pots sell for just $3 to $5 a piece, not enough to break even. According to the International Trade Center, Nigeria still imports nearly $500 million of ceramic items every year. A major reason for the boom in imports is that many people prefer foreign-made and better finished crafts to these locally made ones. Experts say traditional pottery makers can tap into the market if the government and other private institutions step in to help modernize their local craft.
What you need is a lot of education and enlightenment, and you begin to open up even smaller industries. Cottage industries. We don't need big factories. We need cottage industries where they could do this and they will compete among themselves. Competition will bring perfection, and perfection will begin to make the product to be competitive, even internationally.
These women have held on to this craft for many years now with the belief that someday the country can benefit immensely from trading these fine work of art locally and beyond. And Nigeria stands to gain a lot from developing traditional pottery.
Clay, ceramics is one of the things people can actually use to develop the economy, to improve the lives of the citizens, even those living in the rural areas. They will stay in the cottage industries in our villages, and we reduce the problem of urbanization and overpopulation in these cities.
Until then, women like Dorcas can only continue to put their hopes into these pots, their only source of survival. Phil Ihaza, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
An outdoor movie theatre in Egypt is giving moviegoers a chance to embrace the country's serene desert through the lens of art and cinema. Take a look.
As the sun sets on the Egyptian desert, the glares from a projector screen of a makeshift cinema presents a new concept for moviegoers.
Well, I thought, how can one make use of our desert, especially because we have a desert that can be used in many ways, not just for movies or cinema. So I decided to do something nice that people can gather around rather than just coming out here for dinner or a fire then leaving, especially in the summer, because this will be held more in the summer but also in the winter. People will get together, see a nice movie and leave.
But other than watching a movie, the venue offers various social activities.
I wanted to hold a birthday party for my son and my daughter too here because I wanted to show the children the beautiful nature and something new. Watching the movies in the middle of the desert, surrounded by breathtaking nature scenes of Egypt.
There is a difference between the cinema in the desert and the cinema anywhere else. Here in the desert, we have a bit more freedom. I sit comfortably and I find whatever I need.
The change of atmosphere is what makes it special. The open-air cinema has also attracted people who aren't particularly passionate about the desert. Group sizes typically range from 15 up to 70 people. A similar cinema was built at the start of the millennium, but no single movie was ever screened. Locals weren't particularly keen on the idea. The theatre was later destroyed. Chamwono, CGTN.
And that's it for this edition of Global Business. We welcome your feedback. Send it to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platform. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thank you for watching.